Hello and welcome to another Jujutsu Kaisen video. Now with the conclusion of the fight between Gojo and Sukuna finally coming to an end, I thought it'd be nice to go back and see if the fight was really worth the hype or not. I'll be going through each chapter of the fight just to point out things that are important or things that I just really enjoyed. I will have an overview at the end where I will go over my opinion on the entire fight. The fight between Gojo and Sukuna starts on chapter 223 and ends on chapter 236. This is a very long fight, but just like One Piece, it isn't long enough, always making you want more. Right at chapter 223, we have a few big things to go over. First would be the execution of all the higher-ups. This is something I felt was foreshadowed for a while, but knowing that everything has gone to shit, I see why Gojo decided to kill them right then and there. I have no shame in letting my beautiful Gojo commit war crimes on the people that keep fucking around with his children's lives. Good job, Gojo. Here's the best daddy mug. Now towards the end of this chapter, we are introduced to the concept of chants, incantation, dances, and instruments that help curse techniques go to their full output. It is a really interesting concept that fits perfectly because it is going to be a battle of the strongest. You want all your techniques at full power. Gojo's 200% hollow purples just fire straight to Sukuna, and this is when the bells are ringing to signal the fight has begun. Now, with chapter 224, it is all action and a few words. The fight scenes are just so mesmerizing to read. The movement and the action just felt impactful and fluid. Loved how Gojo and Sukuna are just warming up with each other, using barely anything to start off with. The fight moves into a skyscraper, and this is where I love the perspective shots that are used in this little exchange. The shot of them within the falling skyscraper, like, look how much motion and intensity is put into these shots. It's just so good. Funny seeing Gojo use a door as cover to try to sneak in a punch in. This fight just fuels the fire of the hype. A very fast read, but so much fun. Chapter 225 opens up with all the other sorcerers watching the Twitch live stream of this fight. I think this is a great way to use characters, so good job, Gege, on this. This allows an organic explanation of concepts that we are currently seeing within the fight. More importantly, it also makes us, the reader, sit in with the other sorcerers and feel like we're having a real conversation that is happening with people that are invested in this fight. There is a foreshadowing quote that I want to point out because after going back and looking on this, I think it's very important. During this chapter, Angel, or Hana, kind of hard for me to tell at least, states, "So in other words, if Sukuna finds some way to deal with Limitless other than domain amplification, Gojo will lose." This does point out that Sukuna has to deal with a huge issue in order to beat Gojo. They also go explaining why they haven't used domain expansion and also other specifics of creating a barrier for your domain. This leads nicely into both Gojo and Sukuna using domain expansion. The first clash of domain results in Sukuna's victory, which drawing the first blood of the fight. What an incredible chapter, and I do think the conversation with the other sorcerers really helped lead up to this final scene very, very well. Now we start off where we left off, Sukuna cutting Gojo's neck. Gojo heals it no problem, but he is still within Sukuna's domain. We have this beautiful panel of Gojo being slashed over and over again with a big smile on his face. We have Gojo trying to get out of the range of the domain while Sukuna keeps throwing blows, chasing him down. In order to counter the sure hit effect of Sukuna's domain, Gojo performed a simple domain. This buys Gojo enough time to heal his exhausted curse technique. Gojo goes in for a big old hug on Sukuna, even surprising Sukuna with his speed. This allowed Gojo to hit a point-blank red on Sukuna, returning the favor to him from the last chapter. This chapter really had a lot going on. There are two things that really surprised me, along with the other sorcerers. It was the use of simple domain and the healing of exhausted curse technique, showing that this fight is pulling up all the stops, creating and testing new ways of using curse techniques and energy. A great clapback chapter for sure. Chapter 227 starts with Yuta trying to understand how Gojo was able to restore his exhausted curse technique. Then we have yet another domain expansion battle. What is very interesting here is we get an understanding on how Gojo's domain works, learning that the ones that are unaffected by Gojo's domain are him and anyone that touches him. Gojo's domain falls yet again, but we are introduced to a special technique unique to the Gojo clan, the Falling Blossom Emotion. It is a weird name to me, to be honest, but it's an automated ability that repels against anything that it touches. Made to be an anti-domain technique, yet this isn't even the most surprising thing in the chapter. Again, we have a domain clash, but this time Gojo alters the form and the size of his barrier. I know this fight's supposed to be serious, but at the end of the chapter with Gojo and Sukuna trapped within a little ball just made me laugh, wanting to see someone grab it and dunk it into a basketball hoop. Overall, this chapter is very informative, and we see Sukuna flexing on Gojo a little bit. The ending was just funny to me, but made me so hyped to see if Gojo can finally win a domain expansion battle. Now, chapter 228 starts with a very detailed explanation on how Gojo may have been able to create such a small, dense barrier, possibly due to his time in the Prism Realm. The domain collapses, and we see Gojo finally won a domain battle, and it looks like he did some damage to Sukuna. There is a part where I think is very interesting to point out. Again, we have Angel talking about how Gojo showing an ability to Sukuna. I really think Angel is really seeing the full fight, that many things that are deemed impossible are currently happening right before everyone's eyes. Showing your opponent things that are possible may help your opponent adapt even more to the fight. We have a little bit of a quick hand-to-hand match, but Gojo's still wondering why Sukuna isn't using the 10 Shadow technique, especially Mahoraga. But most importantly, we have a nosebleed that will foreshadow a lot to come. Overall, I think the whole domain fights are getting closer and closer, and really helps to make you feel like anyone can win this fight, giving us the whole element of surprise with each and every chapter. Great chapter, and I feel like there is still so much to be shown. This chapter wastes no time. Both Gojo and Sukuna use domain expansion again. Within the domain, we got more hands going on. Beautiful hand-to-hand combat within the domain, and it seems like Gojo coming out on top again. But without any time to breathe, they both do domain expansion again. Yet this isn't just another domain clash. Gojo was able to land Unlimited Void on Sukuna. The shrine collapses. Here we think Gojo finally has taken the win. Then we have a new challenger. Mahoraga enters the fight and saves Sukuna from being destroyed by Gojo in his frozen state. Mahoraga has already adapted to Gojo's domain and just destroys it. This chapter is just so good, feeling like we are gripping the edge of our seats and just wanting more, someone to overpower the other. It is just a good cliffhanger to end off on and really makes us crave more and more of this fight. This chapter just breaks my heart. Due to Gojo trying to find a reason for such an insanely fast adaptation, realizing that Megumin has been taking all the damage from Unlimited Void, my guy isn't having a good day at all. Seeing his sister get killed, then being messed up due to his own teacher's domain expansion, Gojo wants to use his domain expansion again in order to wipe out Sukuna, believing Mahoraga hasn't fully adapted to the Void just yet. Yet, he isn't able to. He is working his brain so hard that it causes crazy nosebleed and he just falls to his knees. Sukuna just starts talking so much shit about Gojo being this ordinary man and trying to use his own domain expansion just for it to collapse and blood pouring out of his eyes. My favorite quote of this fight would be Gojo saying, "My students are watching, you know. I gotta go ahead and just keep showing off." Such a badass line that really just shows that these two people have huge egos and have the strength to back it up. The start of this chapter is just so cute out of all of them. They talk about who has been seriously punched by Gojo. Hakare and Yuta are the only ones who have been punched from the Limitless technique. They both have such a funny panel saying that the punch made them puke. We are shown some amazing paneling of Gojo just dragging Sukuna and throwing around like a rag doll. We got Gojo making clones and it's just seen right through very quickly. Very more dramatic fighting panels that really show how impactful these movements and flow are. Gojo is trying to beat Sukuna before Mahoraga's wheel fully adapts to his infinity. After 4 turns of Mahoraga's wheel, Gojo will be in a very bad situation. This chapter has a cute start and cuter finish. Look at Gojo's smile. Look at it. Great chapter, and it feels like it's just coming closer and closer with this countdown. Gojo is on the clock with this chapter, opening up with another spin, so we are currently down to 2 more spins to be fully adapted to infinity. The opening fight is fast-paced, and it feels like I'm just zooming through this chapter, using blue on Sukuna at the beginning of the fight, then slowly bringing him into the building structure so he can use red was just insane. The red didn't explode, but Gojo used the red to wrap around and push Sukuna to him. A genius way of using your environment. That push allows Gojo to land the first black flash of the fight. This black flash got me so hard. Rock solid reading this. But Sukuna, he's sleeping now. Man's lights are out. But unfortunately, Mahoraga adapted to infinity and slashes Gojo. This was an insane chapter, man. This allows us to see both fighters in such dire position. These cliffhangers are giving me more and more gray hairs, man. The thought that Gojo might actually lose is flooding the minds of all the spectators. I love the first thing Gojo thinks about when he has his back pushed up against the wall is Toji. Toji is still in Gojo's head after all these years, remembering the person that pushed him this far. This 2v1 is just so hype. Seeing Gojo chase after Mahoraga and Sukuna doing his best to keep his little shadow buddy alive is incredible. Sukuna using so much more of his arsenal, using the shadow bunnies and the piercing blood. What is important here is Gojo gets hit by piercing blood attack, showing that Infinity is turned off because of Mahoraga. Then Sukuna is like, yo, Gojo, this ain't a 2v1, man. This is a 3v1. Gojo don't give a shit and says Sukuna looks like a lost alien boy. Gojo is holding his own against all three very well. Mahoraga protecting Agito because he has adapted to so much of Gojo's techniques and just feels so scary that Gojo has to deal with so much already. Yet at the end, Gojo isn't scared at all and he knows what he has to do. What an incredible chapter, and it just keeps piling more and more. This chapter opens up with mostly the spectators talking about going in and helping Gojo due to the numbers advantage, arguing that who should go in and who should be the first to go in. Yet, they come to the conclusion that they'll be getting in Gojo's way. Like we've seen before, Gojo is the strongest when he is alone. The fight continues with Mahoraga and Agito just constantly going at it with Gojo. The fight keeps going and Sukuna's inner monologue wondering when Mahoraga will show him more. This is very important because Sukuna is in the shadows waiting for Mahoraga to adapt more and hit Gojo. After using the slash that takes Gojo's arm, Sukuna resumes in the fight with the other two. Gojo, still only having one arm, just blows away Agito, while the narrator states that purple will mark the battlefield yet again. Tons of foreshadowing done in this chapter, and I really think this chapter sets up more for Sukuna than most people think. Gojo hitting the second black flash on Agito. I mean, Agito is literally gone, but we have to remember where he died at. I think something that people overlook is the narrator stating that Sukuna is feeling uneasy for the first time in a millennia. This is important to note, but I'll get back to it later. Gojo is getting ready to use purple, and I love the expression of Sukuna's face as he screams for Mahoraga to stop Gojo. Both Mahoraga and Sukuna do their best to prevent purple from going off, but it's too late. Gojo lets off a huge explosion with all three of them caught in the explosion. Sukuna looks like he's taken so much damage from that explosion and is barely hanging on. This chapter ends with the sorcerer stating Gojo will win. I really can't stress that enough. The narrator isn't stating this, a character is assuming this will be the outcome. We have this dreamlike state in which Gojo is talking to all his loved ones. It kind of seems like the afterlife. There are a few things that carry a lot of weight in this conversation. 1. Gojo stating that he wouldn't have been able to beat Sukuna even without the 10 shadows. 2. Gojo stating Sukuna wasn't giving it his all. 3. Gojo never cared about keeping Jujutsu going or protecting people, he just treated it like a game. Lastly would be going north to become someone new, or going south to return to who you once were. Sukuna giving a dialogue about how he needed a model he could perform himself to reach Gojo. Understanding what Sukuna was trying to do in order to win the fight, we are shown Gojo cut in half. Seeing Sukuna praise Gojo. This is the end of the fight of the strongest. One important thing that I would like to discuss is the most controversial thing that came out of this fight at the final chapter. After release of this chapter, I saw so many people outraged in the war zone that is Twitter. Holy hell. People saying that this butchered Gojo's character or Sukuna holding back the entire fight. I feel like this is like TikTok brain and we can't remember more than 10 seconds of information. Let me just go through a few things that were said. One point would be in the final chapter that it butchered Gojo's character, and I would gladly ask, how? Is it because of this line? You never cared about keeping sorcery going or protecting people. You were just in the game because you got a kick out of it. Have we not seen Gojo enjoy fighting strong opponents, or just trying to have fun by taunting them, or just overpowering them? Yes, we've seen this. Gojo still cares about the people around him because he's just looking for strong opponents. A great example would be Goku. He wants to fight strong beings, but he still protects the ones that he loves. Gojo has always been an egotistical character. It's because he is the strongest of his era. Then there's the argument that Sukuna was holding back because Gojo says, I don't think I would have won even if he didn't have Megumin's 10 Shadows, and Sukuna wasn't able to give me his all though, and I think that's a damn shame. These comments are interpreted very wrong by most people, or just the ones that are screaming the loudest. Gojo states that he didn't know if he can beat Sukuna even if he didn't have the 10 Shadows, is him just giving Sukuna so much praise. We saw Sukuna himself state that getting hit by a purple would be fatal, and our lovely friend the narrator states that Sukuna was feeling uneasy for the first time in 1,000 years. You can't say that Gojo didn't put up an insane fight against the King of the Curses. Then you have people arguing, then why did Gojo say that Sukuna couldn't give it his all? Well, it's because of Gojo's infinity. Sukuna didn't have a way to bypass that and needed Mahoraga to help him achieve that. There's a point to be made that maybe Sukuna could have figured out on his own, which is possible, but would have Gojo have given him the time to do that? Sukuna himself said the technique was nearly impossible. I also want to talk a little bit about the off-screening of Gojo. People are upset that Gojo was winning at this point and then just dies next chapter. I don't think it's completely off-screen. I do think there should have been a little bit of something before we just saw Gojo's body lying there. I do kind of agree, but to be honest, it is not bad writing at all. We kind of know what happened, not really much to add. Maybe you can add like a little 5-second clip or something for context, but overall I really enjoyed this and it was such an impactful panel. First off, was this fight good? Holy shit, yes! Yes, it was! 100 times yes! I have never seen so many people in the community glued to their screen every week, seeing every single update. That is all that people talked about for a whole week until the next chapter dropped. This fight changed lives. So many people were tuning in every week. I bet I can get up right now from this recording, ask my grandmother if she knew about Gojo versus Sukuna. She would 100% say, hell yeah, Sukuna no-diffed Gojo. This fight showed new ways that curse technique can be used, seeing workarounds in difficult situations. This fight really showed us what the strongest can really do. No one could deny that this fight was a generational fight that hyped and executed so well. I think Gege is an amazing writer, and now that the series is reaching even closer to the end, I can't wait to see all of Gojo's students jump Kaizen Sukuna's ass. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I know I ranted a little bit too much, but I hope I was very entertaining, at least to earn a sub or a like. I would love to see your opinions on the fight and any theories about Gojo coming back or not. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I'll just see ya when I see ya.